I went on a camping trip about 3 years ago. I was 32 and wanted some inspiration for my photography. I wasn't a complete novice, but I wasn't an expert either. I set up my tent by a small, secluded lake. It was surrounded by trees, and at first, everything felt peaceful. After setting up camp, I enjoyed the quiet. Just me and the woods. The first night went by smoothly. I snapped some photos as the sun set. The glow of the mountains was stunning. I felt calm. Then everything changed on the second night. I was getting ready for bed when I heard something. It was soft at first, twigs snapping outside my tent. My heart raced, but I tried to shrug it off. Maybe it was a deer or something. I convinced myself there was nothing to worry about. The following days got stranger. I noticed odd markings on the trees around my campsite. They looked like scratches, but I couldn't tell what made them. Then the shadow started. It felt like something was lurking just outside the campfire light. I could see them shifting, but when I looked closer, nothing was there. It got harder to sleep. Each snap of a twig made my blood run cold. Then on a night I'll never forget, the whispers began. They were soft, like someone talking just beyond my sight. I couldn't make out the words, but the sound sent shivers down my spine. I tried to tell myself it was the wind. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. I sat by the campfire trying to stay calm. I wanted to leave, but I was rooted in place. The fire flickered and that whisper came again. It felt closer this time. I stood up and looked into the dark trees. I felt exposed, like all my fears were watching me. Suddenly I saw him, a figure at the edge of the tree line just staring at me. My heart raced again. I couldn't move. I asked if he was okay. No answer. The silence was thick. I called out again, but he just stood there, not moving. I was terrified. When I blinked, he was gone. The fire crackled as I froze, a chill running down my spine. The whisper returned as I turned around quickly. Nobody was there. I thought I was losing my mind. A couple of hours later, I heard the footsteps again. They were faster this time, almost running. The same guy reappeared, looking scared. His eyes were wide, darting around like he was watching something behind me. Then he asked me, "Why are you with her?" His voice shook. I turned around to look. Nobody was there. When I turned back, he was running into the woods. I never saw him again. I don't think I fully made it out of those mountains. I don't know what I experienced, but it changed me. Those whispers haunt me, and I still wonder if something followed me back. The next few days after I returned home were a blur. I moved through my routine like a ghost. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but it lingered, creeping into the corners of my mind. The whispers seemed to echo in my ears at night, making sleep elusive. One afternoon, about a week later, I decided to revisit my trip through the photos I'd taken. I sat at my kitchen table, the warm afternoon light flooding in through the windows. As I scrolled through the images, a sense of calm washed over me. There were beautiful shots of the lake, the mountains, and the trees. But then I came across something I hadn't noticed before. In the background of one photo among the trees, something dark was partially hidden. At first it looked like a shadow, a tree stump, or an oddly shaped rock. But the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't any of those things. It was a figure, the same one that I had seen next to my tent that night. My heart raced again. I zoomed in, squinting at the thumbnail image on the screen. It had the same wide eyes, the same fear etched on its face. Panic set in as I suddenly felt the weight of what I had ignored. I should have called for help or left the moment things got strange. I wasn't alone in those woods. Determined to understand what had happened, I logged onto a local forum dedicated to the Appalachian Mountains. I posted about my experience, hoping someone else had encountered something similar. I expected skepticism, but the responses were swift and chilling. One user replied quickly, sharing a similar account. "I saw that figure too, but I thought it was just my imagination. It looked back at me with such desperation." My stomach dropped. I wasn't alone in this after all. Another added, "People say that the mountains harbor spirits. You need to be careful." That comment sent adrenaline coursing through me. I spent the remainder of the day researching. The more I read, the more I stumbled upon bizarre tales of lost hikers, strange markings, and shadows moving just beyond sight. I felt like I had awoken something that had been sleeping. My fingers trembled as I flipped through articles and posts detailing encounters far worse than mine. As night fell, I decided to take a long walk to clear my mind. It felt good to breathe fresh air. I followed the well-lit streets in my neighborhood, but uneasiness clung to me. Suddenly, I heard faint whispers behind me. My heart leaped into my throat. I spun around, but the street was empty. The whispers grew louder, almost insistent. My instincts screamed at me to run. I dashed home, the sound of my racing footsteps drowning out whatever was calling to me. Bursting through my front door, I locked it behind me, panting as the world quieted around me. I sat in silence, waiting for something to happen. That's when I noticed a photo resting on my countertop that I hadn't taken. It was an image of the woods, just like the ones I had captured. But this one had the figure in it, staring right at the camera. I wasn't sure how it got there, but I knew one thing for certain. The mountains weren't done with me yet. The next morning I woke up feeling exhausted. Sleep had come in fits, interrupted by dreams of the figure standing at the edge of the forest, its gaze piercing through the darkness. I couldn't shake the image from my mind. I poured myself a cup of coffee, trying to find some comfort in the familiar ritual. But the eerie silence of my home reminded me of the photo on the countertop. It shouldn't have been there. I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and decided to revisit the forum. I scanned through posts looking for anyone who might know more about the figure. The same user who shared their experience chimed in again. It appears when you need something, or maybe when it needs something, they wrote. My pulse quickened at the implications. What could it want from me? Frustrated and a little frightened, I dialed up Emily, a friend who used to be obsessed with urban legends. I figured she might have heard something about strange entities in the mountains. After several rings, she picked up. "Hey, long time no talk," she said, her voice bright but instantly fading at my tone. "Emily, I need your help. I went camping and saw something in the woods, and now it's following me." I explained in rushed sentences. There was a pause on the other end. "Are you serious? You need to tell me everything. Let's meet up," she finally said, a mix of excitement and concern in her voice. We decided to meet at a small cafe downtown. As I drove, the memories of the trip flooded back, hiking up the trails, the peaceful lake, the sudden chill I felt when I saw the figure. The shadows of the trees whispered again, teasing my ears. Once at the cafe, I launched into the details. I showed Emily the photos, the strange figure clear in the frame. Her face shifted from intrigue to horror. "This is not just a ghost or some trick of the light. There are old stories around those mountains, tales about guardians, and sometimes they can be protective or violent," she said, her tone serious. "We should investigate." I hesitated. What if we stirred something up? But my curiosity was winning. "What if it's dangerous?" I asked, anxiety creeping back in. "Sometimes the past doesn't let go easily," she replied, biting her lip. "But we'll be careful. We can go back to the campsite with some sage and a camera. We need to confront this." We made plans for the next weekend, which only left me with a week of dread. Each night the whispers returned, louder, relentless. The day before our trip, when I returned home, I found another photo on my countertop. This one was different. The figure was much closer, eyes wide and mouth open as if screaming. That's when I realized this wasn't just a warning, it was a plea. I felt a chill run down my spine. What had I gotten myself into? I had to find out who or what this figure was before it was too late. The next morning dragged on. My mind raced with thoughts of the figure and what I would face in less than 24 hours. I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I spent hours on the internet, digging deeper into local legends. Each story seemed to hint at something darker waiting in the woods. Around noon, I received a text from Emily. "Can't wait for tomorrow, got some supplies and a couple of old maps. I feel like we're on to something." The excitement in her message clashed with my dread. I wanted to be excited too, but the closer I got to facing the unknown, the heavier my heart felt. Later that day, I drove to the site of our last adventure. the dense pine trees looming over me as I parked. This was just a scouting trip, I told myself. I walked along the familiar path toward the lake, the beauty of nature swallowing me whole. But as I walked, the static in the air grew palpable, sending shivers through my skin. As I neared the water, I spotted something unusual. A small broken sign lay half buried in the dirt, its letters barely visible. I knelt down, brushing the dirt away with my fingers. Warning: do not trespass past this point. My stomach twisted. Was this related to the figure? Why was this place being kept secret? Just then a rustle came from the nearby thicket. I turned quickly, expecting to see an animal, but the underbrush was still. My breath caught in my throat. It's just the wind, I muttered, convincing myself as I stood. Then I noticed it. A strange circle etched into the ground, as if someone had been kneeling there. The soil was disturbed, and beside it lay a small trinket, a carved amulet shaped like a wolf. I reached down to pick it up, feeling a rush of unease. Was this left for me? Or was it a warning? I couldn't tell. The whispers in my mind grew louder, urging me to leave. Back at my car, I was nearly in a panic. I needed to talk to Emily again. I dialed her number, barely able to keep my voice steady. I found something, you won't believe it, I said when she picked up. What is it? She asked, instantly alert. An old sign and what looks like a ritual site. I think we're messing with something we don't understand. Let's meet up right now. We need to figure this out. As I drove back to town, I felt a cold breeze sweep through my car, rattling me to my core. I glanced into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the figure lurking behind me. The mirror showed only my own pale reflection staring back, eyes wide with fear. Arriving at Emily's place, my hands trembled as I explained everything. She listened intently, her eyes glinting with a mix of trepidation and fascination. I think we're getting closer to understanding this, she said after a moment. But we need to be ready for whatever happens tomorrow. Suddenly the lights flickered and I felt a chill seep into the room. Then everything went dark. Emily, I shouted, panic rising in my chest. Stay calm, she replied, but her voice was strained. Then I heard a soft whisper just above a murmur. Help me. It echoed in my ears like a distant memory. I didn't know what it meant, but I felt a compulsion to find out. The darkness enveloped us, leaving me disoriented. I took a shaky breath, trying to calm myself. Emily? I called again, my voice small in the silence. Right here, she replied, her tone tight. I could barely make out her shape across the room. A faint glow emerged as she fumbled with her phone, the screen flickering to life. I squinted against the sudden light. Did you hear that? I asked, the whisper still echoing in my mind. Emily's eyes narrowed as she nodded slowly. Yes, I did. It sounded like someone was in trouble. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced around the room, half expecting to find someone or something lurking in the shadows. Let's get some candles or flashlights. We should check outside, I suggested, my voice lower now, almost urgent. She agreed, and we quickly gathered our supplies. A few candles illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. As we stepped outside, the cool air washed over us, but it did little to settle my nerves. The stars glimmered overhead, but their beauty felt distant. I felt vulnerable, exposed. The woods around us loomed, and the weight of their secrets pressed down. Do you think it came from the direction of the lake? I asked, trying to sound brave. Yeah, Emily said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling between us. Let's check it out. We'll stick together. We walked cautiously, the sounds of the forest surrounding us, crickets chirping, leaves rustling. But beneath it all, a distinct tension hung in the air. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see the figure I had glimpsed from the woods earlier. As we approached the clearing where the lake lay, something caught my attention. Off to the side, near the edge of the water, where the moonlight barely reached, I saw a glimpse of something, dull and reflective. I pointed it out to Emily. What is that? She whispered, squinting to catch a better look. Let's get closer, I said, my curiosity outweighing my fear. As we neared, I realized it was a piece of metal sticking out of the ground, half buried in the mud. I crouched down, wiping away the muck. The chill deepened as I uncovered a small, rusted box. Its lid was slightly ajar, revealing darkness inside. What do you think it is? Emily asked, standing a bit back, her eyes darting around as if expecting someone to jump out. I don't know, but it might be important, I replied. I hesitated before opening it. Should we? Yeah, but be careful, she warned. I felt a wave of apprehension wash over me, but my fingers trembled with a mix of excitement and fear as I slipped my hand into the box. That's when I saw it. A weathered journal, its pages worn and crumbling. I pulled it out and held it up to the light. The cover was etched with strange symbols, symbols that felt oddly familiar. Emily, look at this. She stepped closer, her eyes widening. Where have I seen these before? Suddenly a sound shattered the quiet. A crack of twigs echoed from behind us, sharp and loud. I spun around, heart pounding, ready to confront the source. But the clearing was empty, the dark woods stretching out behind us like a vast hungry maw. I took a step back, clutching the journal tightly. We need to leave, I said, dread filling my voice. Wait, Emily replied, her curiosity piqued. Don't we want to see what's inside? Before I could respond, I heard the whisper again, closer this time. Help me. Fear gripped my throat. I had to know, I had to understand. But I also knew something wasn't right. As Emily reached for the journal, a chill swept through the air and the atmosphere shifted. Something was coming. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my curiosity rooted me in place, heart racing. The air thickened with tension and I could feel my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I clutched the journal, a heavy weight in my hands. Emily, I really think we should go. She hesitated, her eyes locked on the journal. What if it holds answers about... Another crack broke through the silence and the whisper grew louder, more urgent. Help me. It felt as if it was right beside me, wrapping around us like icy fingers. I jerked back, glancing into the woods. The shadows felt alive, closing in, and that sensation of being watched intensified. We have to move now, I urged, but she stepped closer to the water instead. Just let me look at it, she insisted, reaching for the journal again. I pulled it away, panic rising. This wasn't just an unusual occurrence. I felt it in my bones. Emily, I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. We don't know what we're dealing with. She bit her lip, torn between fear and curiosity. But what if it's something important? What if someone really is in trouble? I looked back at the dark path we had come from. Silence hung heavily, almost mocking. What if it's a trap? I could hear my own voice, shaky and frantic. We need to go, we can come back later. Just as I turned to head toward the trail, movement caught my eye. A flicker of white in the trees. It was quick, almost unnoticed, but it sent a jolt of fear racing through me. Did you see that? Emily shook her head. See what? I thought I saw something move, I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. A soft rustle began in the bushes, and I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end. We're not alone, Emily. Finally, she set her jaw and steeled herself. Okay, let's go, but we can't leave without knowing. Before I could argue, she snagged the journal from my grip, flinging it open. The pages were brittle, the ink fading, but one drawing stood out, a haunting depiction of the woods surrounding us, and next to it, scrawled in frantic handwriting, were the words, "Beware the watcher in the dark." My pulse quickened. Emily, we shouldn't, but it was too late. The air crackled and the whisper escalated into a chilling wail. Help me. Help me. The air felt alive as if it pulsed with the voice of someone trapped. We need to run. I could barely breathe as the shadow seemed to pulse and shift. I snatched her arm, half dragging her backward. The journal fell from her hands, closing with a thud against the earth. As we turned to flee, the sound of splashing water followed us. Something crashed through the underbrush behind us, heavy and relentless. "Hurry!" I gasped, adrenaline surging as we dashed toward the path. Every step felt weighted, as if the woods themselves were holding us back. We burst into the trees, the branches scraping against us as we raced blindly down the trail, breaths ragged in our chests. All thoughts of the lake, the journal, the mysterious voice faded as pure survival instinct took over. But just when I thought we were safe, a shape loomed out of the darkness ahead. My heart dropped. Whatever was watching us had followed. "Emily!" I shouted, but she was already stopping, eyes wide in horror. I skidded to a halt beside her. In the pale moonlight stood a figure, its features obscured. I froze, my mind racing for options, but all I could focus on was that single word echoing in my mind. "Help." Then the figure took a step closer. "Help me." My heart pounded, and the forest fell silent again. I realized then that this was only the beginning. I took a half step back, the words hanging in the air like a dark cloud. The figure was still too far in the shadows for me to see clearly, but it radiated an unsettling presence. "Who are you?" I managed to force out, my voice trembling. The figure's face seemed to shift as it stepped into the light, just enough for me to catch a glimpse. It was a woman, her eyes wide and desperate. "Please, you have to help me," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper, thick with fear. "They're coming." What did she mean? My mind raced, piecing together every horror story I'd ever heard about these woods. "Who's coming?" I asked, but the fear in her eyes was enough to silence me. I glanced at Emily, who was as rooted to the spot as I was. "Run!" Emily shouted suddenly, breaking the spell. She grabbed my arm and I stumbled as she pulled me back down the path. I didn't know if the woman was trustworthy or if she was just a way to lure us deeper into danger, but I didn't want to stay and find out. The underbrush crackled around us as we moved, fear propelling us forward. I tried to shake the image of the woman from my mind, but her eyes, those frightened eyes, haunted me. "Do you think we can trust her?" Emily gasped, glancing back, her breath coming in hitches. "No," I panted. "We need to get somewhere safe." The trees around us felt alive, branches clawing at our clothes and skin as if they were trying to pull us back. I dared a glance behind. Nothing. Just the same dark stillness that seemed to swallow our words. But then I heard it, a sound like footsteps crunching leaves. Not ours. Something was in pursuit. My heart raced as dread washed over me. I didn't bother to warn Emily. We just pushed forward, urgency fueling our strides. We rounded a bend and stumbled upon a small clearing lit by the dim glow of the moon. Among the trees stood old stone ruins, a crumbling foundation of a long abandoned cabin. I skidded to a stop, trying to catch my breath. "We can gut out in here," I said, feeling the weight of its history settle on my shoulders. "No, we don't know if it's safe," Emily protested, her eyes darting around. But before we could deliberate further, the sound behind us grew louder. "Inside!" I shouted, the command escaping my lips just as I shoved through the cracked entrance. Emily followed me in, and I turned to yank the door closed, bracing it with my shoulder. We stood there, panting in the semi-darkness. Dust motes floated around us, catching glimmers of moonlight through the cracks. My eyes strained against the dark, trying to make out anything beyond our immediate circle. "What was that?" Emily whispered, pressing against my side. "Just breathe," I found myself saying, even though my own breaths were shallow and panicked. Then out of the silence, a voice echoed from somewhere deep within the ruins. "Help. Me." It sounded familiar, echoing the cries from before. My blood ran cold as I realized the connection. There was a chant building in my mind, a whisper of ancient warning that felt tethered to the very stones around us. Are we safe in here?" Emily's voice shook as it cut through the air. I opened my mouth to reassure her, but the words lodged in my throat. Because one thing was for sure. We weren't alone beneath those old beams. "Help. Me." The voice echoed again, closer this time. My heart pounded in a desperate rhythm as we held our breath, waiting for what would come next. The voice called out again, almost pleading. My skin prickled, a sense of urgency clawing at my insides. With every fleeting moment, the air in the room thickened, almost suppressing my breath. "Should we go?" Emily whispered, her eyes wide and reflecting the faint moonlight. "Maybe we can find another exit." I shook my head, unsure. The idea of stepping back into the night was terrifying. "No, we can't leave yet," I stammered, forcing the words out. "I have to know." But before I could finish, the wall behind us creaked. I turned my head sharply, my stomach dropping. The sound came again, louder, as if something was trying to get through. Emily clung to my arm, her panic mixing with mine. "Help me." The voice echoed closer now, more frantic, reverberating around the room until it felt like it was surrounding us. "Stay here," I murmured. I wanted to sound brave, but my voice was thin. I stepped cautiously toward the shadowy corner from where the voice emanated. The stones felt cool and damp under my palm as I tested the ground. That's when I saw it, a small wooden door set into the wall, almost hidden by the rubble. It took every muscle to push it open, and as I did, a gust of stale air washed over me, mixing with the dampness. Emily grabbed my shoulder, squeezing tightly. "Don't! We don't know what's down there." I hesitated. Her fear gripped at my chest, but so did the call for help. "I have to check this out. It might lead to an escape," I said, though my voice lost its confidence even as I spoke. "Please don't go alone," she begged. "Just a quick look," I promised, cringing as I could see my lie taking form. I took a deep breath and stepped through the door. The darkness swallowed me almost instantly. I could hear the muffled echoes of Emily's protests behind me, dim and distant. It was colder in here, chilling to my bones, and the air felt thicker, as if it were a blanket suffocating me. A staircase spiraled down into the blackness. I moved slowly, each step creaking beneath my weight. The voice faded into a whisper, barely audible, but something pulled me deeper. "Help." Just as I reached the bottom, I stumbled into a surprisingly open chamber. Flickering shadows danced on the walls from an unknown source. An odd light pushed through cracks, illuminating figures carved into the stone. That's when I noticed strange symbols etched into the walls, swirling patterns I had never seen before. It struck me that this place felt more than just a hiding spot. It was a part of something much darker. Every instinct screamed for me to turn back. Suddenly I heard a shuffle behind me. Panic rushed through my veins. I wasn't alone. Then everything went cold. I felt an icy breath against the back of my neck, something tangible in the air. Without thinking, I bolted back up the staircase, my heart pounding with terror. Bursting through the door, I collided with Emily. "What happened?" she exclaimed, breathless. I think we need to leave." But before I could explain, a loud crash echoed from the chamber behind us, like something being forced against the wall. My heart dropped. "They're coming." We turned as one, eyes wide with fear, ready to face whatever the night threw at us. It was clear then. We had disturbed something that was never meant to be awakened. We barely took a step before a deep growl rumbled from the chamber. It chilled me to the bone, and my instincts kicked into high gear. "Run!" I shouted. Emily didn't hesitate. We sprinted back down the dim corridor, her hand clamped firmly around my wrist. As we reached the small wooden door, I pushed against it, panic surging through me as it creaked slightly but didn't budge. I should have known better than to waste time trying to fight the impossible there. "The other way!" Emily screamed, pointing toward the stone wall on our left. I barely processed what she meant before she yanked me by the arm. The walls felt alive, buzzing with unseen energy. We turned and saw another narrow passage, its edges shrouded in darkness. My heart raced. "Will it lead us out?" I yelled, glancing back as shadows stirred from the chamber. "I don't know, we have to try," she cried, and without waiting for my answer, Emily darted into the new tunnel. I followed, fear overwhelming every rational thought. The walls squeezed us as we ran, as if trying to hold us back, but we pressed forward. I could hear the growls growing louder, accompanied by a strange whispering that taunted me in an unfamiliar language. Panic threatened to swallow me whole as we twisted and turned through the maze of rock. Then we hit a dead end. a solid stone wall rising up before us. No, no, no. I pounded my fists against the cold surface, desperation creeping in. The growls echoed behind us, closer now, as if whatever was chasing us was just moments away from breaking free. "Over here!" Emily shouted, her eyes wide and frantic. She was pointing to a small opening barely big enough for one person. Without hesitation, she squeezed through. I followed quickly, the sound of her breathing quickening my pulse. Once inside, I realized we were in a small alcove, barely lit by an unseen source. I glanced around, taking in the strange markings again. They were different here, pulsating softly as though they were alive and watching us. I felt the urge to reach out and touch them, but the growls reminded me we didn't have time. "We need to keep moving," I said, my voice shaky. I leaned closer to Emily. "Do you think whatever is after us was in that chamber?" "I don't know," she whispered, her eyes darting around. "But we have to find a way out before it finds us." No sooner had she spoken than a shadow flickered at the edge of our alcove, followed by guttural noises that made me freeze. A figure emerged, partially obscured by darkness, its features twisted and grotesque, eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. "What is that?" I barely breathed the words. Before I could comprehend, the figure lunged forward, teeth bared. Instinct kicked in again. I turned and sprinted back into the passageway, Emily right behind me. But as we raced down the corridor, the growls morphed into laughter, and the darkness seemed to close in tighter. It swallowed our screams as we ran headlong into whatever awaited us at the end. In that moment, I feared we might not escape this nightmare unscathed. The passage twisted and turned beneath our feet, a claustrophobic reminder that the walls were moving with us. The shadows hunted us, and every guttural laugh behind us felt like a Judgment Day countdown. My heart thudded like a wild drum, but I couldn't allow myself to look back. Emily and I pushed forward, limbs burning from exertion. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a wider space lit only by a flickering, unnatural light. The air was heavy and frigid, charged with something ancient. As we cautiously stepped inside, the whispering returned, clamoring in a chaotic symphony, urging us to listen. In the center stood what looked like an altar of sorts, stones arranged in a half circle, each carved with intricate symbols. The oppressive atmosphere thickened, shadows dancing erratically. Against the altar was a crumpled figure, seemingly unconscious but alive. My breath caught. "Is that her?" I pointed at the woman from before, the one who had pleaded for help. We hesitated, unsure if approaching would pull us deeper into danger. But the figure stirred, her eyes flickering open. She gazed up at us, terror coursing across her features. "Run!" she gasped, her voice thin but urgent as the shadows around her writhed like angry snakes. "You have to—" Before she could finish, the shadows lunged, thundering toward us, enveloping her in a dark swirl. Panicked, I grabbed Emily's arm and turned to flee back the way we had come. But the way was more shadow than corridor, disorienting and treacherous. "Which way?" Emily shrieked, fear radiating from her. "I don't know," I yelled back. A rustle sparked a shiver up my spine. The laughter was getting closer. We huddled against the wall, panting in fear. The growls grew louder and more distinct, echoing around us. In that moment, amid the chaos, I saw a small opening at the far side of the chamber, half hidden behind an old fallen beam. "Over there," I pointed urgently. "That might be our way out." Emily didn't hesitate. We dashed toward it, dodging the malevolent shadows reaching for us. I felt the air crackle with anger around us, hostile and alive. But we pressed on, bolting through the small crevice and into another passage. The cramped tunnel felt longer than it should, every inch echoing with whispers and chants of dark intentions. Just when I thought the darkness might consume us both, another glimmer of light appeared, pulling me forward. We stumbled out into a bracing night air, fresh and startling, under a canopy of stars. My senses thawed momentarily as we collapsed onto cool grass, breathless. But we couldn't afford relief just yet. "Are we safe?" Emily breathed. "I think so. For now," I muttered, still grasping her hand tightly. But even as I said it, I felt the familiar chill creep along my spine. "Help me," the echoes whispered, more insistent now, reaching toward us like icy tendrils. They hung in the air, lingering just at the fringes of the woods. I glanced back at the tree line, silhouetted against the moonlight, dark and indecipherable. It might have followed us. "You think?" Emily replied, her eyes darting nervously behind us. "We need to move," I insisted, standing up quickly. We darted down the nearby path leading back to the campsite. It was a gut instinct to return, like the woods were demanding we confront our experience. The adrenaline coursed through me. Confront or collapse, it felt like our only options. As we stumbled over roots and rocks, the oppressive atmosphere settled heavily. I couldn't shake the image of that woman or the dark power lurking behind us. As we reached the clearing, silence blanketed us. The campsite felt strangely familiar, yet distorted by everything that had happened. The shadows seemed to stretch, alive under the moon. "If we don't face it, how do we know it's over?" I said before I even realized the meaning of those words. They settled in the space between us. "Are you serious?" Emily looked incredulously at me, tangled in fear yet caught in something deeper. "I don't know, but I can't keep running forever." She nodded hesitantly, the determination rising like fog in her eyes. "Okay, let's be careful." The faint memory of the figure flashed through my mind again, and I realized its plea was mine to carry. Whatever had happened in those woods needed closure, whether it was supernatural, the distortion of the mind, or something more tangible entwined within the earth. Together we confronted the void where the tent had once been, forcing each other to let go of the lingering shadows of uncertainty. And then, I caught a glimpse of something merging from the trees. Whether another figure or simply my own fear, I wasn't sure. I took a deep breath and called into the darkness. "We are here, we're listening." The whispers fell away for a moment, and I thought I might hear something. But as the night deepened, a chilling laughter rang out, reminding me how loose the veil between worlds could be. As we stood there, the faint line between reality and something else blurred, the whispers returning, teasing at the edge of my perception. We had scratched the surface, but I still couldn't tell what lived in those woods. An echo of what was, a lost spirit, or just a trick of the mind. I moved forward cautiously, Emily at my side, calling one last time into the gloom. We would need to unravel these threads, but shadows only lingered at the back of my mind, waiting. And as we faced the unknown, I thought about what we might find, or lose, if we continued on this path. But I knew deep down that some questions would linger forever unanswered.